Her sons,
That's actually
Abdelaziz and
so
Abdullah,
sad.
left behind as governors of Al-Andalus and Ifriqiya respectively, would both be killed on the Caliph's orders. Suleiman's mishandled efforts and bearing axes and swords
Finally, the battle.
contingents.
Finally.
Larger, making up the center of the vanguard along the
Early Muslim expansion. Guys, I have been bombarded and bombarded and bombarded with so many suggestions. Do this, do that, react to this, react to that. Guys, if there's something that I haven't done in a while, please remind me. Because
While
holy, the amount of stuff that I'm getting is mad. Okay, this is the end of the last episode.
Save the merchants and artisans.
If you haven't watched that, go watch it. This is, we're about to start the new episode here. Alright?
Towns and cities would swear fealty to Ibn Qasim and the Caliphate.
No, I'm done talking. I am going to skip.
Visigothic kingdom of Iberia could trace its root. Visigothic king.
Oh my
Continue
lord.
the war.
Skip.
Visigothic kingdom of Iberia could yet, for all its
Alright.
was not invincible, and dangers both internal.
So yeah, that's all that I had to say. So remember, always remind me if I'm falling behind.
The kingdom of Iberia could trace its roots back to Alaric, the famous general who first fought for Emperor Theodosius against the Franks, holding the Balkans as a Roman foederati or semi-autonomous ally, before his relationship with the empire soured, and he became the first person to sack the Eternal City in over 700 years. The Visigoths had been one of the several so-called barbarian peoples to arrive in the territory of the crumbling Roman Empire, with various Gothic and other Germanic peoples found in great numbers throughout the empire and on its outskirts as slaves, soldiers, and allies. In the aftermath of Western Rome's fall, the Visigoths were among the first to carve out their own kingdom from its ashes. Though Alaric's power base had been in the Balkans, the Visigoths would migrate ever westward following his death, at times allies of convenience to the collapsing Roman Empire, and at other times taking advantage of the West's fall to expand their power. It would be in the Aquitaine region of western France that the Visigoths would first establish a true kingdom, from there pushing into Suebi-controlled Hispania at Rome's behest, their kingdom encompassing Aquitaine and nearly the entire Iberian Peninsula by the death of the great warrior and lawmaker King Euric in 484. The years that followed would be less kind, however, as easy expansion against the backdrop of a crumbling Rome gave way to new rivalries against other powerful barbarian kingdoms, most notably the Franks and Burgundians. It would not be long after Euric's death, during the reign of his successor Alaric II, that the Visigothic territories in France would fall to these northern rivals, led by the Merovingian king Clovis, leading to the establishment of Toledo as the new Visigothic capital. With the Pyrenees now forming a natural border, the Visigothic kingdom would remain secure in Hispania for the next 2 centuries, with occasional further conflicts with the Franks and a revanchist Eastern Roman Empire making little lasting change to the status quo. As the 8th century dawned, though, the Visigoths would unexpectedly find a far greater danger arising to their south. The Umayyad Caliphate's border with the Visigothic kingdom had been an embattled one since their first arrival, with raids into southern Iberia having begun as early as 706, following the conquest of Tangier in today's Morocco. In fact, the campaign that would spell the end of the Visigothic kingdom likely began as another of these large-scale raids, with the force of some 1,700 that crossed the Strait of Gibraltar in 710 under the leadership of Tariq ibn Ziyad, governor of Tangier, being quite sizable for a skirmishing party, but smaller than would be expected had they intended a campaign of conquest from the beginning. But circumstances favoured the Muslims. Following the recent death of King Witiza, the Visigothic kingdom had entered into a succession crisis, with Roderick in control of southern Iberia, pitted against the poorly documented Angela II in the north. However, this low-intensity civil war was only indicative of larger weaknesses within the Visigothic kingdom. While the Visigoths had ruled Iberia independently for more than 2 centuries at this point, and had exercised great autonomy under a weakened Rome for another century before their independence, they had continued to rule on essentially tribal lines, despite the scale of their kingdom rendering them inefficient. The feudal systems that would allow later kingdoms to efficiently raise armies through local vassals did not yet exist in Iberia, and while the landed aristocratic class of the Roman period had essentially merged with the Visigothic conquerors to form a unified ruling class, the ethnic Visigoths that still made up most of the readily available warriors the various Visigothic chiefs could draw on made up only a very small minority in the larger kingdom. King Recared's abandoned...
This is mad. This is mad to me. Like, I never knew anything about the Visigoths, or the only real kingdom that I've really ever heard detailed info on is the Ostrogoths, and even then it's kind of not really much. And Francia. Every other Germanic kingdom after the fall of the Western Roman Empire, no, I never really heard any details about. There was the what was that Germanic kingdom in North Africa after the fall of the Western Roman Empire? The one that Belisarius conquered. The Vandals. Yes. The word that vandalize. That's still mad to me that vandalize comes from that. Yeah, them too. Cause Belisarius and the whole thing. But the Visigoths? Yeah, no, I never really heard of the Visigoths.
Of the Arian sect of Christianity, traditionally followed by the Visigoths in 589 in favor of their kingdom's majority Chalcedonian Christian faith, accompanied by the abandonment of the Gothic tongue as a church language, had done much to unify the Visigoths with their subjects. However, the Hispano-Roman aristocrats had not been a warrior nobility, and the kingdom lacked efficient administrative systems by which to mobilize its peasantry to war. While every denizen of the Visigothic kingdom was theoretically required to provide military service to the king on demand, this duty was owed directly to the king, rather than to a more accessible local intermediary, making it a duty only too easy to ignore for the vast majority of the population outside Toledo and the king's own domain. Thus, while the Caliphate had been able to vastly expand its power through its conquests, through recruiting large numbers of converts in conquered territories for further campaigns, and by embracing the sophisticated administrative systems left behind by the Romans and Persians, coupled with laws laid down in the Quran, the military power of the Visigothic kingdom was not fundamentally changed from the tribal armies that had fought Rome under Alaric. Its army still made up in large part by the personal warriors of Visigothic chiefs, despite the vastly larger Latin population they ruled over. In addition to the relative unpreparedness of their foes, the Arabs had a valuable ally on their side, Count Julian of Ceuta, who was most likely a Byzantine governor who had switched his allegiance upon his empire's abandonment of North Africa, rather than attempting to fight a doomed resistance against the Arabs.
Smart man!
Well, it seems...
Yo, I can't even blame you for that. If you see that your empire just abandoned you, bro, I've watched so many of these reactions. I see people just fight in vain, and it's you know what? Good on you. You have my respect, but at the same time, it's why are you fighting if no one isn't coming to help you?
He aided by
oh my
his
goodness,
suzerain ships for the crossing of the Strait of Gibraltar. His larger role in the story is somewhat in question, despite his importance in later accounts, which claim he had made the first attack on Iberia with his own forces in 709, seizing loot with which to entice the Arabs to destroy Roderick for him and avenge his daughter's rape at the Visigothic king's hands. No mention of this grudge exists in the Mozarabic Chronicle of 754, the earliest surviving account of the invasion. And neither Julian's subservience to the more powerful Arabs, nor Musa's predictable decision to expand into the rich lands of the Visigoths require any tales of vengeance to explain. The accounts that paint Julian as the architect of the Visigothic kingdom's conquest also clash with both the Mozarabic Chronicle's assertion that Arab raiding had begun years before the conquest, and with the common narratives of later Christian accounts, which claim that it was the enemies of Roderick within Iberia that requested and facilitated the Muslim invasion. While any of these stories might be at least partially true, they are likely irrelevant. With North Africa subjugated and inhospitable, with difficult-to-traverse desert to the south, the Caliphate's invasion of Hispania was an inevitability, whether Roderick was guilty of raping Julian's daughter or not, and Julian would have been compelled to support Musa as a caliphal vassal, with or without any personal grudge.
Demonetized. Demonetized! This video has been demonetized.
As a side note,
I mean, if it did, bro, go for it. I mean, shit.
Modern
I don't blame you. I don't blame you, man.
Is named for Tariq, in a corruption of the Arabic Jabal Tariq or Tariq's mountain.
Oh, that's cool.
The renewal of raiding in the south went at first unanswered by the Visigoths, allowing Tariq to establish a secure base of operations on the site that would later become the town of Algeciras, from there pushing deeper into Iberia. They would face their first opponent shortly after, Theodemir, a Visigothic count holding extensive territories near Murcia, who, with his force of some 1,700 men, attempted to delay the invaders in a series of skirmishes while sending reports and pleas for aid back to Roderick. The establishment of this base and the arrival of further Muslim reinforcements quickly demonstrated to Roderick that this was no common raid, and he began assembling what forces he could muster at Cordoba, sending a force of cavalry ahead to aid Theodemir in his resistance.
Bro. How do you let them get a base? How do you let them get a base, bro? I know they ignored it, but like, really? Really?
And
you let it get that bad?
Withdraw northwards to join him. Meanwhile, he began his own much slower march south, hindered by poor logistics, the slow arrival of reinforcements from disloyal vassal chieftains, and a lack of discipline among the conscripted serfs. He finally regrouped with the battered remnants of Theodemir's force at Guadalete, their numbers weakened after a series of skirmishes over at least a month that greatly favoured the mobile Berber cavalry making up the bulk of Tariq's forces, which had also been mercilessly raiding the countryside so as to force Roderick into a battle on the field. Guadalete would soon be the site of a historically pivotal but poorly documented battle that has been the basis of countless conflicting tales and legends.
Which is...
The numbers involved are very much in question, with later Christian chronicles claiming as high as 187,000.
What the hell?
Though the number given for the Muslim forces in the Mozarabic Chronicle.
Which is mad because these are Christians. These are Christians that are giving this high number. So that's why I raised my eyebrow, because I'm like, usually, what are these people trying to like downplay these numbers?
7,000
for the sake of propaganda,
force, with 5,000 reinforcements, bringing the total to 12,000, is likely at least significantly inflated as well. It is at least plausible considering the readiness of converted Berbers to join Musa's forces across subjugated North Africa. No figures are given for the Visigothic forces under Roderick, save a similarly unlikely 100,000 claimed by later Arab chronicles. The defenders did. What the heck?
We got both sides of the story inflating the other. What? The irony, that's so ironic. Because you'd think that they would try and downplay the numbers, but no, they're gaslighting each other up. Like, aren't you supposed to be the one gaslighting yourself?
It most likely outnumber the invaders, with over 30,000 in the highest modern estimates, though given the previously mentioned challenges in mobilizing their Hispano-Roman subjects, even a number half this large is likely generous. But they failed.
Yeah, bro, I looked at, honestly, the way what I'm seeing is these niggas had absolutely nothing to mobilize.
It's problems of disloyalty that undermined their small numbers advantage.
This is
some recurring themes found in both Muslim and Christian sources may shed some light on the events of the Bloody July Day. The previously mentioned Mozarabic Chronicle of 754, though a useful source for information on the Visigothic kingdom's history and politics, mentions the Battle of Guadalete only in passing and elaborates little on the tactics involved. It does, however, make it clear that many of the more powerful Visigothic tribal leaders had only feigned their support when accompanying their king to battle, intending to lead Roderick to his downfall and claim the throne themselves. And while later accounts are of questionable reliability, this general narrative of betrayal surrounding the kingdom's fall remains a constant. Some accuse Roderick of having had Witiza assassinated in a coup attempt, while many other accounts are quite hostile towards Witiza and his line as a result of the late king's anti-clerical policies, with villainization of Witiza growing harsher and more common as time passed. Witiza's opposition to a series of discriminatory decrees by the Spanish church councils targeting Iberia's large Jewish population might have contributed to this, given the growing hostility towards Europe's Jews in the era of the Crusades and Reconquista, a period that had seen renewed interest in the fallen Visigothic kingdom and to which many of these later chronicles trace. Many of these chronicles even suggest that two sons of Witiza, seeking to claim their father's throne, had invited the Arabs into Iberia, or that Iberia's Jews had used their close ties to the Jews of North Africa to do the same, seeking an opportunity to end their long suffering under the harsh anti-Semitic policies of the Visigothic kingdom and its church, which since 694 had even allowed for any Jew refusing baptism to be enslaved. Neither story seems likely, especially considering Witiza was unlikely to have been older than 25 himself when he died, making any children he might have had rather young for such scheming. But
only 25, wow.
If anyone had hoped to take advantage of the Muslim incursion to claim the Visigothic throne, they would be very disappointed. Roderick had his loyal Visigothic warriors armored and bearing axes and swords.
Finally, the battle!
Contingents.
Finally!
Larger, making up the center of the vanguard, and a smaller detachment held in reserve. Behind these staunch defenders, the ill-equipped levies he had raised from his domain around Toledo and during the mustering at Cordoba were arrayed, in a particularly sorry state even for peasant conscripts. Roderick's hurry to engage the invaders, leaving little time to see these slaves and serfs equipped or drilled. On the wings were the forces of allied chieftains, many of questionable loyalty, and the kingdom's comparatively meager cavalry remaining after the losses inflicted during Theodomir's fighting retreat. Tarik, though outnumbered, had far more cavalry than his foe, and fewer concerns of morale and loyalty. Though the majority of the Arab warriors that had come forth from Syria to conquer North Africa had either returned home or remained behind with Musa, he had a strong contingent of heavily equipped Arab cavalry making up his army's center, with Berber and Arab infantry behind them, while Berber light cavalry on the wings and in the rearguard made up the bulk of his army. Accounts vary greatly, but it would seem that the first 2 days of fighting remained more or less in the balance, with both armies suffering mounting casualties and with greater Visigothic numbers seemingly giving them the edge at first. Both leaders encouraged their forces with speeches, Tarik chastising his forces for falling back during the second day's fighting, claiming that only by holding fast and seizing victory could they hope to survive and return home, and promising to lead them to riches and glory on the following day. When the third day's fighting began, Tarik would prove true to his word, personally leading his heavier cavalry a charge that broke through the Visigothic warriors making up Roderick's center. With the enemy vanguard depleted by 2 days' fighting, Tarik's cavalry soon found themselves with nothing but scattering serf levies between them and the enemy leaders and rearguard, with the Muslim infantry taking advantage of the breach and following closely behind. The circumstances of the following rout are unclear. A Visigothic leader slain early in the charge seems to have been mistaken by the Muslims for Roderick, starting a false rumor of the king's death that hastened panic and desertion in an army already held together by very little. Some accounts claim that much of the Visigothic...
This is the most one-sided fight I have ever reacted to.
Oppa, a possibly illegitimate son of Witiza's father and predecessor Egica, defected to Tarik as part of a pre-arranged betrayal. And while this claim is rather doubtful, it is clear that many did desert the king as the tables began to turn. A general rout soon followed, as the levies broke and the Berber cavalry charged the enemy flanks, running down fleeing soldiers.
Washed off.
Though Roderick's personal forces put up a staunch defense despite their broken lines, inflicting sizable casualties, the premature rumor of the king's death would soon prove to have come only a few hours too early, and by the fierce battle's end, the king and a sizable portion of the Visigothic nobility.
Kings and generals, you are funny as hell for what you just said. The premature rumors would only come a few hours early.
Had been slain. Though nearly 3,000, close to a quarter of the Muslim force, had been among the casualties, losses had been far greater for the defeated Visigoths, and their kingdom would not long outlive their fallen king.
Wow.
The Visigothic kingdom
Washed
so
off.
reliant on the military dominance of its ruling minority and commanding little loyalty from its subjects, this single crushing defeat effectively spelled its end.
What?
Tariq was quick to march to Toledo in the aftermath, where Oppa.
I have never seen a battle so decisive, number one. Number two, I've never seen someone get washed off this quick. This freaking quick. I've done so many reactions. That was the most one-sided shit I've ever seen. I've never seen a kingdom fall this fast.
Who does not in fact seem to have been present at Guadalete despite later claims of his battlefield betrayal, had taken the Visigothic throne. Oppa would prove a ready collaborator with the conquerors, aiding
I genuinely thought that the Visigothic conquest was going to be a lot more hard. Nope.
to cross the strait with another army to
It was like walking on freaking paper. It's literally bending paper.
Remainder of Iberia.
Wow.
With
I'm
Turk's
honestly
armies
stunned.
splitting into four in order and Musa and Tariq would not enjoy the fruits of their success for long. By 715, they had completed the initial conquest of the peninsula, overrunning the lands of the Basques and the northern territories held by Angela, who disappeared from the record, making his supposed collaboration with the Arabs unlikely. But just as Musa had himself taken power in North Africa after the political disgrace of its conqueror Hassan ibn al-Numan, Tariq and Musa, by this point feuding with each other over the spoils and glory of the conquest, a precursor for more Arab-Berber hostility to come, would be summoned to Damascus by a sickly and aging al-Walid, only to find the Caliph already on his deathbed upon their arrival, and his brother Suleiman the acting monarch. Mired in a rocky succession, with al-Walid having backed his son Abdelaziz ibn al-Walid for the throne, Suleiman ordered Musa to delay his triumphant entrance into Damascus until after al-Walid expired and he properly became Caliph. In doing this, Suleiman hoped to claim some of the glory of the conquest to inaugurate his new reign. Musa refused, however, entering and dedicating his victory and the spoils to Al-Walid.
Oh
This did
shit!
little to ingratiate him with Suleiman, with predictable results after Al-Walid's death less than a week later. Tariq and Musa were both first stripped of their wealth, then disgraced and publicly paraded as traitors, ostensibly in response to Musa's complaints towards the confiscation, but in all likelihood an inevitable part of the broader crackdown on Al-Walid's governors and loyalists that took place upon Suleiman's inauguration. The two conquerors of Al-Andalus would live the rest of their lives in obscurity, while Musa's sons, Abdelaziz and Abdullah, left behind as governors of Al-Andalus and Ifriqiya respectively, would both be killed on the Caliph's orders.
What?
Suleiman's mishandled efforts to assert his control over the far-flung provinces of the empire would backfire in Al-Andalus, however, with the death of Abdelaziz sparking a period of self-destructive infighting, spurred largely by the resentment among the Berbers towards their lesser treatment compared to their Arab co-religionists, despite playing such a vital role in Iberia's conquest. With the conquerors turned against each other, their hold on Iberia would begin to show cracks almost as swiftly as they had won it, with the mountainous northern territories breaking away under the Visigothic noble Pelagius to form the Kingdom of Asturias in 722. It was not the far-flung western
Wow.
frontier of Iberia
Are you done?
that Suleiman would spend his short reign focused on, however. Eager to forge his own legacy to match his brothers in the short time remaining to him, he would soon turn the armies of the Caliphate towards a prize long denied them, Constantinople. Upon
Alright. That was mad. Honestly, that was such a swift defeat. I'm just like, wow, okay. But anyways, if you're new to my channel, you like my reactions and you want to see more reactions like this, comment, give me some suggestions in the comments below. If there's any type of reactions that you will love to see my reaction to. If you are an active viewer of mine and you have suggestions, bro, that I haven't done, A, remind me. And B, if you want me to do it faster, I recommend you become a channel membership. Your videos are done quicker. My reactions to your videos are done quicker. You have better communication with me. You get access to my exclusive Discord server where it's so much better, so much more efficient. Only channel members have this. All my members that are in that server, they are not disappointed, okay? It's only 99 cents and I purposely made it cheap for my more dedicated viewers who want to see me react to a whole bunch of things. You know, we can like... We benefit, okay? It's like a mutual thing. I gotta link the video in the description, not description but comments, where I explain all the details and benefits that you get when you are a channel member, because I'm not gonna sit here and talk about this here, okay? Good video, man, good video. Thank you for watching and goodbye.